As we learn restoratives, what we really are focusing on is reorganizing the spaces by kind of shifting how gravity flows through. I want to say reorganizing the spaces we breathe into, but the truth is we're reorganizing how the muscles and the pathways of the body in with these shapes. So I want us to start out with a supported chest opener. So the basics with the props is you have a stack of blankets, which could be this high, which is two folded quarter fold blankets, or you can have it lower. You have a bolster across the mat, horizontal, and your legs are going to be either two variations. Okay, so let's sit in front of our bolster, grounded, not on a bolster. Okay, you're either going to start, I'll show horizontal chest opener first. It's the easiest one to get into. So I will take a block. There's two options, remember. Don't make a choice if you got two choices first. C, so block under the pelvi, because it's lying back, and legs release down, and a sandbag goes across the thighs. Okay, if you do not like sand on the thighs, you can place it across the ribs. This is an opportunity to kind of stretch out through the hip flexors. Okay, option one is horizontal chest opener. Okay, well, you'll be there for a little bit, so you might get set. I'm going to demonstrate and be in this one because it has been a minute since I've worked on this, and I can definitely work on stretching open my chest and the sternum to have more height. So I'm going to place my hips down in front of the bolster, still across, blocks under thighs. Really, they're under my knees. And then I have my belt connected. I'll place it around my pelvis, overhead around my pelvis, just like you've done many times for reclining cobbler's pose. The same setup. It's just that this bolster is different. Well, the bolster's not different, but the way it's set is not lengthwise as a ramp for my spine. It's actually a ramp for my ribs. So we're going to go rib ramping. Okay, and then when I lower back, I've got to feel that my lumbars, the lowest parts of that spine, are supported. So perhaps the blocks going higher under the thighs. Just might be interesting how it reorganizes these spaces of the thighs. I try to get the block so it kind of pushes my thighs so it's bigger. Okay, so then the muscles there that are connected can release. And then as I lower back, I feel around for where that sand might be, and I place it lengthwise or across. I like the heart to the belly idea right now. So yeah, decide on the options. Like, keep in mind you're focusing on reorganizing the way gravity flows. So if you are feeling that the front of the thighs need that work, you go to horizontal chest opener. And if this is different, a different way to use the props for today, you might try it and be surprised how it combines the layers of opening that our body really craves, right? And if it doesn't crave this one, your back doesn't like it, you take the other pose. I do not suggest putting a block under your pelvis on this side. You want the contour. So if you feel like stuffing something at the lower back is a good idea, just change it up for the other pose. But I love to feel the contour of my rib here as the sand flows down the heart to the belly. You can feel the front of the spine. Settle yourself into the pose of choice, and noticing if the blankets are straight back, it's only supporting your neck a little bit. Maybe push the blanket so it's under the center of the back of your skull, not pushing into your neck. And then trust that the chest can open and the shoulders, maybe they have a sense of kind of holding. So you might like the hands to slide down. You might let the arms bend a little bit more, hinge. And just take the time for inventory of the sensations of breath and the connection into your practice. Just feeling maybe the two pulses. With sand on my floor, I can feel, the heart. I can feel that pulse. I can also feel my breath, which is, I can coordinate and change that pace. But the heart's not going to really change unless I can slow it down with my breath. Right? I'm kind of the inspiration, right, for the heart. So as the spine feels the arch, the ribs expand. Receive your breath, releasing on the out breath. And let that heart as the kind of the timekeeper in the body, right? It definitely paces things. Feel it just gently slow. Give a few more moments before we shift. And absolutely, if you need to bring the knees together, walk the feet towards the seat, anything that you might need to shift for comfort, do so. Feel the belly move a little bit up. And then on the exhale, relaxing towards the core. And now slide the sand away. And if you've got the belt connected, you're going to unbuckle. And if you're in horizontal chest opener with the block under the pelvis, I would just say maybe walk the feet in. So we're all going to guide that direction. And let the hips lift up enough that you can slide the block away from under the pelvis. Because then you can approach where we're going all together. Right? We'll all be together now and where we're going towards this next shape. So you can feel the interesting contour, the kind of rib curve, right? It's kind of the spine curve, right? But the ribs are part of it. And we're going to just lean to the left or right. It doesn't really matter what direction you're going to go. But you'll come on to sitting. And we're going to sit in front of the bolster or on top of the bolster into a figure 4 pose. Okay. I like to lean back on my elbows and then take in an ankle. Now I tend to kind of push into my opposite foot to lift the hip up just a little bit. So it's kind of it's a cushioning, right, of movement. So when I lift, then I cross the right ankle to left knee and guide my left foot closer towards my seat. And it might seem kind of pretty lackadaisical variation. And let it be that way. Let the right knee just feel its movement out. Of course, you can make this more intense. You can try to hold on to the left side with the hands, but you can hold below the knee and pull yourself towards it. But it's nice to just tilt back and feel the arch of the spine and then just switch sides. So right foot down and then feel kind of your movement, the trial of movement in the hips when you shift. So on that side, my hip leaned a little right to get the leg up. And as the figure 4 pose is pretty easy peasy on this variation, see if you can work with that left knee reaching outward. So it could mean that it leans to the left. It could mean that it pushes forward away from the midsection. And of course, you can hold the opposite leg and grasp and tug, but it's kind of nice just to work with these different ways to reorganize the spaces. So before we come into pigeon pose, which is where we're going, I'll show modification. Just notice how your hip is tilting at below the low spine. So I tend to feel, now I'm going to switch to the other side and try that for a moment. See how your pattern is in the back of the pelvis. So you might find that when you're leaning back, it's straight across. You might find one side, the knee tilts out really, it's like not the same, right? You just have different habits in all these parts. So take just a quick kind of review on each side, just kind of feel, maybe close your eyes, just noticing. Get some differences. Now come back to sit on the bolster on top. Turn your blankets behind you horizontal to the edge of the bolster so they're all connected. Now you've got this whole kind of ramp for your body to lean into. Some of you prefer just one blanket, not two on this one. I want to make it as restorative as I can, so I'm just going to go with two. So right knee's going to lower down, and I try to get my right buttock, to feel from my sitting bone and the flesh out. And then as my left leg stretches back, just going to walk the hands forwards and let the top of the back thigh release. Okay. You can keep the chest up. You can lower down onto your blocks or the floor with your elbows. Okay, and if you find that modification is needed and this is too much knee pull, still sit on the bolster. Okay, and take a block in front. We're going to actually do this. If you're doing this now, you're going to do this twice today. So it'll be a nice little knee rehab work. And put the ball under the left knee and lean forward. So right foot's going to try to flex, right? Flexion is protection for the knee versus letting it just kind of torque in. So flexing. So those that need to take that forward fold, instead of pigeon, go with that. Think of it as a variation on pigeon pose anyway. So as we lean forward for some of us, you'll notice the back of the pelvis really can't really shift like it did when you were sitting moments ago for figure 4. It sort of is held in light of the hip stretch. You can let your head tilt. You can just feel the movement of the neck. But it's just fine if you want to put your head down onto your hands or onto a block. Yeah, 2 blankets under the knee is going to make it a little easier. Okay, now feeling first the movement in the rib cage, either variation you're in. So trying to expand the back, the ribs, feel the upper body in motion with breath. Yeah, I have to kind of remind myself a little bit of cat pose is good. And now if the neck is kind of lurking, we're going to be addressing all that pretty soon in some inversions. So not that you can't take care of it here, but you might have to let your head nod a little side to side. Give your neck permission to release. Okay, now as we move down into the hands, we're going to walk on back to feeling more of an upright pigeon pose. And let's change sides. And since we're fairly creative in these classes, but we're also aware of how to go with it. So you'll just stretch it across, the left thigh will come forward and the right thigh will tilt back. So it's really not that different than figure 4, right? It's the same thing with movement, but this time when your right leg goes back behind you, you're able to work with moving patterns in your back and coordinating the arms, right? When we were sitting, we really coordinate our arms very much. So don't give up on using the upper extremities to support how you're presenting this shape into your hip muscles, joint, all the fabric that moves down to a knee. You could think of it as fabric, I guess. And as you press, feel what it's like to lower down the elbows. Maybe the elbows go out. Maybe they walk farther forward with the palms. Okay, and if this is not the option for you right now, could be a couple of reasons why. Well, one, it might just not feel like it's received well and it hurts. So you can put your right knee resting on a ball. You can also have the right leg straight, or the last side, I didn't think on that one, but the leg that's reaching forward with the foot on the block, try to have a little bend in that and then lean forwards. So the concentration will be on my midsection, cultivating that habit of attention on that inner lift and tilting. Okay. You're all good though. I like these two variations, and if it's possible, you can do both of them. You might try the other one. Yeah, think of today as having some variations that you can do too, and just try different shapes for the moment that we're doing the hip opener. But as we lean in, your elbows release down, the head leans a little bit forward, but with the breath, kind of feeling into rib spaces expand and release. Feeling that strength around the heart. Now as the hips start to reach back, right, that means you're trying to find your seat. So the hands slide back, and now what we'll do is we'll just flip upside down. So we're gonna reach the left knee forward. We're gonna lean into our left hip. If you're seated with the foot on the block, easy, right? You just take your foot off the block, take the ball out, uncross, and then taking a blanket under your head, only one blanket is needed. Be sure you put it far enough back that you don't have your blanket underneath your shoulders. And if you love doing reclining leg stretches with a wall nearby, get kind of close and see how you can maneuver yourself to use the wall as we go into this. So, and sometimes you have to kind of try it and then go further back, go further to the wall. So I'm center on the bolster, and as I lower back, I'm going to let the legs, let's just swing them up for the moment. Just kind of let it, kick them up, shake them out, do a little leg tantrum. Yeah, especially having some knee pressure in the last pose, a little bit of circulation grip into the knee bands. So just feeling that reach and imagining right the side of the knee and just above that, or right now below that, you're looking at the IT band. I want you to feel if you can let the legs just go a little side to side with the legs straightish. Okay? A little side to side. Okay, get a hold of your belt. I got an idea, so I'm switching it up for a moment. Belt's unbuckled, and hopefully you'll bend the knees and you'll try to scoop up your feet. Sometimes this is better done with one foot, and then you have to lift up and then get the other foot. But it is interesting, even if you can get up and down off the floor. Some of these other maneuvers are good to work with as we age and try to get our spine continuing to be flexible and hydrating these tissues right into the legs. So push the feet out and hold the belt. If you are one that likes to have the belt connected on wide stance, perfect, right? So leg float. Let the legs shift side to side, get a good grip with the hands, or if it's connected together, you don't have to hold. And as the legs go side to side, feel, maybe closing your eyes so you can direct the attention into the backs of the legs. And feeling if the feet turn out a little bit, if they're parallel, they turn in. What feels like the support for your pelvis? Of course, it's a bolster, but the supportive kind of intelligence in your little mini movements. Movement minis, that's what we'll call them, movement minis. Okay, now try turning the feet in Of course, caution, right? You're not going to turn them all the way in. The feet are going to stay connected to your legs, so that's good to know. But it might feel different in the hip, kind of if it feels grippy or clicky. You're gonna pull on the belt and slide the feet together and take that left foot. Well, don't take it, just move it away from the belt, down, away, and hold the belt together with the left hand. The left leg below can bend as much as it wants as we cross the right leg to the left. So just know that you don't have to keep it fired up, pushing into something. I tend to turn the bottom foot out, and that's because my right leg is rotating over to the left. So I can feel the side span of the hip, but the bottom leg can definitely bend more than you think. And you might try with the leg sort of semi-straight and then bending and see the difference in the sensation in the upper hip. Maybe you have none, but I can only speak from my experience or visiting with people or learning, but I'm going to push into my elbows on the bolster and kind of slide myself just a little bit back so it's perfect sensation. Here's a great way to work on our hip, and it's safe on the knee for all, right? This is probably not going to hurt the knee or cause, if it already has inflammation, you might have to back off and bend it a little bit. Or you can have your foot like touch a wall if you want to reorganize yourself in your room. So your foot isn't kind of being dragged down by gravity with pulling on the belt. You still would have a belt that you might touch onto like a chair or a wall with your foot if your knee has a lot of inflammation. That's just something to know. But if you're pretty good to go here, let the waist stretch. Feel into that right hip. I feel for your hip. I'm just here to help out and get some circulation and blood flow. Okay, now as you bend the right knee, okay, feel from the top of the leg how you get back to center. I'm gonna move my pelvis back center, my left foot slides in, and kind of reset the sacrum reset, and left foot up in the belt, straight up vertical, like legs up. If you feel like, oh, that's funny, I move on my bolster, and now it feels like I need to be lower, you can always shift yourself. But it's true, a twist, usually you might move the bolster, you might move up on the bolster. Okay, now right leg lowers down, keep it kind of friendly for the knee, just let the foot lower. And I'm just gonna kind of spin off into the side right away. So cross the left leg over to the right, hold the belt now with the right hand, and then guiding at your circulation, you might move on your bolster a little to the left, you might move uptown, downtown, the side of town as your leg crosses over, and then feeling from pelvis, kind of the etching to the side seam of the hip. And so it's almost as if you're kind of sewing this, right? You're trying to find, okay, this side, this kind of the just tracing the outline of a hip. Doing any little maneuvers that you need, mini moves that might release some holding. Maybe your waist feels a little tension, the left arm stretches out to the side, and just simply breathe. That's all you got. Maybe a couple of yoga props, a body, and some breath. No good without the breath, though. Now we're relying on the bolster to hold ourselves up, right? To hold the pelvis up. So it is helpful. Like I do like this wall here. I probably ought to use it a little bit more because when I push into it right now, any of that lingering kind of pull into my knee is just gone, right? So again, if you're helping out your knee in the future, you never know what comes up. doing these stretches are great for the hip because they get kind of stuck if you're trying to protect the knee. You won't do these like some of these hip stretches, but you could use a chair, something that's maybe not just dragging it in space, right, to hold the foot on. So you can lengthen out here and just get some blood flow on the IT band right above the side of the knee. Right? This area, you can even kind of comb through it or move your fingers across to give some circulation. Give it a little love, a little touch. You're the only one that's going to do that. Kind of cross fiber movement. And then let's add the ball. Let's kind of see how this goes. So we already have the left leg over to the right. It's kind of there. It's a movement. I let my hip get a little up. Then as I bend the left knee, I'm just going to slide the belt out. Keep it very close. You'll need it very soon. Okay. Now, get the ball. Set the right foot closer to the bolster. Reset the back of your pelvis. Feet on the ground. Okay. Now, I like to be pretty far down on the bolster. I'm not on the floor with my rear, but I do like to feel that support of my ribs. So when I bring the knees up, the ball is centered. And at least the books I read from Judith Lasater, they all talk about it being as far down on the bolster, easier on just the contour of the aging spine. But there's always somebody that doesn't agree and doesn't feel right for them. So you get to make the choice. All right, arms open, knees side to side. Feeling where the hip lifts up as the legs cross over. And feel if you can get a little swing in it. So the knees might move towards the arm. Of course, if my arm is lower, it's easier to get to the arm. And make it interesting. Don't make it like you're trying to do the ultimate reach to the arm, stretching it over the shoulder line. In these inversion, these qualities, we're not looking to have the arms overhead because we want the heart rate to lower. We want to down-regulate the nervous system. So out from the shoulders or down is fine. Okay. Now, as the back has had a little bit of a warm-up, I'm hoping, I want you to just place the ball besides and alternate knee towards the chest. Doesn't mean touch the chest, just alternate, bend a knee, hold on to the back of the thigh. And we always call it bend the knee, but it's creasing the leg. So I'm trying to also move my pelvis a little bit when I bring the knee towards me. Kind of like scooping. A little more challenging with a bolster for certain, a little more stomach work, but we can work that core area. Why not? Okay. Now, next time you draw the leg in, let's go right leg. Okay. So if you're close to the wall, you might get a little excited about having the wall below your foot. Right, you're touching the wall. Okay. Maybe not. All right, so don't get too touchy to the wall because once you put sand on the thigh, you're going to be pushing further down. If you're worried about your knee hyperextending, maybe definitely use a wall and keep the heel off of the wall so that if I have the ball of the foot, my heel is not slammed into the wall, it won't hyperextend my knee. So it's kind of nice, like you have an arched kind of foot, a little heel. That would work well. Okay, buckle up. Buckle up, everybody. All right, make a big loop if you don't have one already. And we're going to try to transition here to brain float. So as I scoop up my foot, I'm really hoping that my foot at the wall is going to work well, but we'll see. It's to be, we're going to find out soon. All right. Okay, belt is in a loop, and the loop generally the measurement would be if you just let it hang from your foot. The arch, it goes to the crown of the head, and then you scoop it up. You scoop up your head with the belt. Now that's pretty clear sensation right now I'm getting in my leg. So I want to keep it pretty sparky. So I want to just stay, calf, feel, my arch is feeling a bit, so I might scoop the belt a little further, just move it around in on the foot until I'm comfortable with that. So as I add my sand on the left thigh, if you don't have sand, no worries. The wall might even be more important, right? So you have some concentration and support. But the arms will release out and the weight of your head relaxes back in the belt. So the shoulders center back. I'm going to try to bring my head towards the blanket and just, I like that. Just feels inviting and comforting for my neck. So I still get traction. And I suppose if the knee is uncomfortable with the sand, then you just move the sand away. Okay, it's on the top of the thigh, it's not on the knee, but again, it's going to bring circulation down the thigh. And if you just don't have a wall nearby, you can put like a blanket under the left knee, some little padding so it doesn't hyperextend. And so with the moments here, the head's either a little bit up, belt is around the shelf at the back of your head, or you might let your hamstring kind of help you lower your head down. It's kind of a fun shape to work with, brain flow. Lifting and lowering. Just kind of teasing the tissues a bit to releasing. If it's a little crazy with the energy in the calf or the foot, no surprise, right? The feet get walked on a lot this time of year, maybe more than others. So the leg could use the stretch. But if it bugs you, you can always take away the belt from the back of your head like so and hold on to it and just loosen up that pressure. That's fine. This is an option 2. Let's take just another breath here. Okay, and many more breaths to come, but for this pose, we're going to shift the leg so it's still going to stay tractioning my neck. So I'm going to slide the sand, let it roll off. And then as I guide my left foot to the floor, the bottom of the foot, I'm just going to feel holding the back of my head with the belt and then lift up the left foot. And the second side could be a whole different routine of just the beginnings of it. So lower the bottom, right leg. Take your time, maybe feel your head tilt back, maybe you feel it lift and the right leg stretch down. So I can tell a tiny bit of difference with my, well, the compensatory patterns you have right in your posture. So you might have to spend energy and go, okay, is my foot about the same pressure as the first side, or do I feel like it's not quite there? So it might be differences. Of course, we have those, right? With our, mostly our pelvis, right? Where everything kind of moves out of. So you might work your way trying to feel the wall with your foot. If you don't have a wall, don't worry. You still are getting a good stretch here. So the sand possibilities on the top of the right thigh now. And feel the differences. This could be a leg that's not as flexible, but it feels more stable in around the joint. So I find it all pretty fascinating. The knee joint, the ankle joint, neck. And if you spend too much energy wondering about everything, just maybe breathe and let it go. Just let the body receive the practice. Some people might like their heel at the wall, I imagine, and that's often taught. But just for knee safety, maybe the ball of the foot is good. And make sure that the belt is not too tight. Second side could be different. You might have to change it up a little bit. You might have to loosen it. Give your second side the same opportunities to release. Don't judge it if it's different. I mean, if it's different, that could be a bit of a concern, right? How do I make this the same? But have some leeway, maybe more belt traction, loosen it up, let things come back into place. Yoga practice is like life too, right? You learn a lot, but this is simply yourself, self-awareness, care. Okay, take the last few moments. Now slide the sand. Let's move it over to the left side of our practice space. Okay. And then as you hold onto the belt, slide it off the back of your head if you're not already holding it. Let your head lower back to the blanket. And then just reach both feet up just for a good measure. So we can kind of balance it out. So feel the hands hold. Sometimes I like to tighten the belt a lot and make it into still a loop, but bring the palms, like hands prayer position. And the belt is around right to my ulnar, so just below the thumb. And let the elbows bend and bring the hands a little bit down. Maybe stretch them up. I love this version. It's a pretty decent movement in my arms. It's nothing aggressive, right? But it's using the circulation of inversion to stimulate that flow of lymph to the heart, where it moves through the blood, right down into the organs of elimination. So getting my legs upside down is very good. You just have to do it. Okay, now as you lower take the belt off your feet, let's be belt free for a while, or a long time maybe. We're gonna shift to side sage. So you'll need another blanket likely. You're gonna let your knees wander and then wander down from the bolster. So shift down, roll to one side, come down so that you're seated. And even though you've been on the ground and you're still seated, right, you still can feel a little shifted from being on your back to just sitting upright. So give yourself time to kind of get your things together here. So we're going to need a couple blankets. And some people do well with one and they fold it in half. They just kind of make a wad with their blanket. I like I guess I'm just kind of following the traditional pattern of having a couple. This is what I've taught, so I'll go with it. Have a block on the other side, unless you don't use a block for this. You might use two, you might have one low, one high, stacked on top. Sometimes one block is plenty, but if you're not sure how to set up two, one low, one high, okay? Move it a little to the right side, unless you like to really evolve your chest stretch. And then if you have a ball and you use it for side sage, place it on the inside of the right knee, and you're gonna lean down to that left side and take the support of weight on your right hip or your ribs. And then come into the side stretch. It might feel great to get into it sooner than later after being upside down. So that you're just kind of, again, reorganizing the spaces that you're breathing into, but also how reorganized the way gravity is kind of mapping the way it moves through your body, how it flows. So this one, I like to kind of feel my hip kind of kick back. So generally when we're walking around where our hip is kind of lifted, it's tight. It kind of has its own little friction, right, to move the leg forward, So right now, what I'm doing is I have the knee, of course, bending. I have a ball under the inside of my right knee. I kind of move it with the opposite foot, probably a good thing to play with. But as the side reaches, then you might feel your hip kind of lean back, just tilting, reach for the block. Maybe move it a little bit if it's not in the right spot. Or maybe you don't want to tilt your hip back and you want to lean to the left hip. That's fine. Just kind of play with little things that you can work with to stretch the torso. Yeah, you might usually work on this like specific, I just lean into it and I go for the reach. Or I have my arm on my side, but you're tilting left a lot for left side sage. But it's okay to, you know, even if your right arm is down resting, just kind of feel the movement of the pelvis back. And be slow, don't be fast, just so the spine can kind of get to support. The spine can get with the program, catch up with your movement. We're taking a few more moments. We don't want the spine to have to play catch up, right, with the hip. So, and the hip can pull us around pretty quickly. So for me right now, it felt okay leaning back to my hip for moments, maybe half a minute. But now I'm going to lean a little more left because it feels better on my knee. You know, some little things like that can change the knee, the circulation. So if you got stuff, right, going on in the knee, you kind of know. Careful. Maybe your knee goes closer to your left knee, your top knee. Maybe you're in a fetal position. Take a few more breaths. Okay, now we're going to just take a mini movements between the two sides. So you can tell that if your arm moves open towards the ceiling, that you try to keep the hip kind of in that reach. It's hard, the hip kind of rolls back. So it's trying to get the waist to keep in control. You know, different ways of working your core. This is great stuff, really pulling things apart, but don't let it just drop you back. And keep you in center. And then turn to the left, so you're gonna let your sand probably fall off. Because man, that's kind of heavy on my hip. And then let's take ourselves to mini movements. So we'll come around to hands, knees. If you decide, no, I don't want to go to on my knee position, you can always find different options with cat-cow. Maybe if you're not on the hands and knees and you're gonna come up like this, and you can do cat-cow here, rounding, arching. You can do all kinds of stuff without knees down. So just know there's options. And many of us will say, oh no, I can get on the hands and knees. So fingers, really stretch open the palm. You can turn the hand out, round your back to cat. You arch the spine. Now feel the difference in the right and left side of the spine just from doing one side sage. It just feels more full of fluid and circulation on my right side, hydrated, just feels more spacious and warm. And now last one, arching. Okay, see if you can just bring the hands to turn out and stretch your hips down on the bolster. So the front of the hip bones, right? The quads feel a little bit of length. And you can always bring your elbows down on the blanket if you feel like this is too much on your hands. You can come down here. It's nice to have this stretch in the front, lifting up the heart. Okay, now come back to table. Walk your hands to the left and then shift into your right hip. So as I lean down, all those ideas about how it should be kind of have to go away. You have to go, okay, I got my props set up. Okay, how am I going to lie on these? So again, it's about reorganizing the bones. Okay, so I'm going to put my ball to the inside of my left knee, and as I tilt down, there might be a habit of this bolster kind of kicking out behind you. So if you want to try to establish, you know, what's in charge here, which is the waist. Okay, and then maybe you have sand needs. Maybe you don't want to use sand and you're just trying to figure out what's the safest thing right now for the joints. So the sand might add too much too soon, so you can always wait on it or add it and see if you can get rid of it. But as that left arm reaches over, you can let your head lean into the side or the back of your head. You choose side or the back. And just simply feel that expansiveness in the ribs. The arm might need to move a little further to the left or the right, so you might have to reset your block. You just never know. Or go without a block, let the arm stretch open. Just roll a little bit to the back of your head, or let the arm stay down by the side. And remember the hip movement. So if I have sand on my hip, okay, it might drag your hip down, right? You might push it to the left and back. It might not be a bad thing, but be careful, right? So some of us might be so curious about it, we just go with it and go, oh, that's kind of fun. I'll just let the sand pull my hip. But keep in mind, it's going to pull your knee too. That's the end of that piece, right? Is the knee is going to be taking the brunt of it. So you've got to kind of be very aware of your body circulation, really aware. I mean, it's a lifetime of full study to figure just yourself out. So stay with it, you know. So as you reach, the left arm could stay moving, open. Yeah, what I find interesting on my second side, I'm not sure, you know, I always like feedback on this one. My other side has some, that's a knee that has some history, and my hip mobility is much greater, okay? And that's probably one reason my knee has issues, right? So then this side, my hip is a little more stable, controlled. It's harder for me to get it to move back, but this knee is way happier. So noticing that stability is great. So it's probably better to feel stable versus overly flexible in all our things. So just don't overdo it, right? It doesn't ever help us as our joints are maturing. Keep stable, keep strong, work on the bones, securing, stabilizing, keep with that. So if you don't want to drag your hip around, don't drag it around with the sand. So as you start to move yourself from this one, we're going to do some very strange things coming up. So feel the length in the side. Take a few more breaths. Feel the weight in the right hip. Remember, it's weight-bearing stuff. This isn't just flexibility, right? It's weight-bearing with sand, with bones. And then we lower down the sand, we toss it or move it purposely. And the sand is pulling, you know, some of the spine area is getting some pull with the sand. So it's good. When you come out from this one, left knee to right, you rotate. Let's kind of feel this back of the pelvis area. Move the ball to the side. And now we're going to make ourselves a nice we're going to kind of make a bridge here. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a block and another block, and you're going to make the block spacing so there's some space between them for your bolster to go on top of. So I'm going to use my blanket under my knees. Probably don't want it to be very high. You know, you're not going to fold it up any higher. This is probably as high, if not too high. You could tell I'm in question if I want the blanket, but I know some of us might find that it's the most important thing for our knee, but don't think it's going to be the answer though. Okay, so what you're going to do is add your bolster on top. Okay, so our focus is to go into what's called, this is a child's pose variation. Okay, so I was going through some textbooks on Iyengar methods, and of course this came up, and I thought, oh my gosh, I have not done this in ages. And I want you to kind of feel how, when you are lowering down, your head's got to be, it doesn't have to be actually, it could be on the bolster. So I'm going to push my bolster a little further forward. So when I lower down, you can tell I'm kind of trying to figure out where I'm going to be. But when I lower down on the bolster, my feet are at the wall, and push it further out. Make sure your block is under the bolster on each side, okay? And then when you lower down, okay, you're gonna have the legs stretched. Now, most everybody's taller than me in this group. So if you decide, well, I don't like this, too scrunchy, this is the option. two. That's what's taught most often. People use two bolsters. They'll have the bolster down here so they kind of straddle the bolster and lean in. But the other option would be to stretch over the bolster. It pushes the chest a little bit, so that's the only trick. This is my favorite, is my chin is at the edge of the bolster. I let my thighs relax so my hips stretch open. And the blanket's kind of a no, it's a nothing really for me. It doesn't do any good to help my knees, but it's my knees are out. So you feel like you're kind of almost straddling the bolster, but the knees are out. So it's no different than child's pose, right? If we come back to child's pose like this, the knees are the same position, but it's definitely not as friendly on my knee joints. So try this out. If you decide, I'll show a picture of it, this manual, so you're kind of go, okay, is this really something people do or not? Is she making this up? So this is the variation. You probably can't quite see it, but you can see that some people use two bolsters at the bottom. She's using two bolsters. She's hugging it, her head's turned. One of this is child's pose. Some of you might like this one. Diane, it's funny, I look into your picture and for a second I was like, is she really there like that? Or she's not animated, I guess. So, maybe no blanket. We'll do this for just a little bit, and then we're gonna move around in it. So if you decide, well, I like the chin on the edge, or maybe you wanna be further over the bolster so your chest isn't pushing. The key though is that we're opening the back. This is it. It's just this. This is the focus. We're doing all this for this. The things we do for you back. So if the chin is on the edge and it feels kind of weird in the throat, well, that's what your throat's doing most of the day anyway, huh? It just is, you're not standing up. So let the knees flow out. Feel if your feet can move outwards. Don't push anything on a knee joint. And just let the breath expand in the back. Give yourself a little lung time, right? Lungs open, the upper back area. Yeah, if you have two bolsters, right, you could place them. You could have like your round bolster here, and then you have something a little bit higher to be supported on. That would be good. Maybe I'll send this picture to people so you can have a little homework. You can have something to play with. So next time we come around to it, if we ever do, you have some options with props. Okay, now let's try this. So our feet, tops of the feet are resting. Whether the feet are touching each other, they're apart. And we're going to stretch the arms back besides us. So we're trying to lift up into locust pose. I know, goodness gracious, this is a bit of a workout. My ribs are now trying to collaborate with the sides of my spine. It's all working. It's trying to. And I stretch the arms back beside. So the bolster kind of holds you up. Like, how come we didn't do this one before for locust pose, huh? Use the bolster. If your belly's full, this is not going to feel too good, right? It's going to be a lot of pressure in the digestive tract, but it's a good pre-eating thing to do. Now, hands on the ground and stretch out through the fingers, stretch open, and then straighten out the arms. Push the floor away. Feel that arch. Breathe. Okay, now keep the chest reaching forward, forward, forward. Okay, lower down. Just don't go to sleep in it. Just bend the elbows. Feel that flexion, that movement pattern, flexing and extending. Push into the hands, lift up again. Okay, and then come back to table. Okay, and we're going to turn the bolster back to horizontal. Take the blocks out. Thank goodness, block free. And reach the hands. So if you need your blanket under your knees, place it. Reach the hands forward. Now, if you're a child pose person, you just love that pose, you can come back to child's pose, right? Some people might just lean back, put the hands down, forehead down. Yep, I find that my knee probably just better off without putting that compression in it. So some people will go a lifetime with the knee pretty good. So that's fine for them. But have the arms with that armpit opening. Okay. Now walking the hands on down, we're going to take just a moment of toes under. You're going to lift up the knees possibly. Alternate bending your knees to pedal out the feet. Watch out if you're kicking the wall. Take the heels off the wall if you can. Alternate stretching from the ball to the heel. And then let your head relax down. Breathing. Stretching through the chest. Now evaluate when you come down. We're going to just slide the bolster back into closer to the wall. What I want you to do is crawl around. This is my favorite seated pose set because I got a wall. Is I'm going to sit on my bolster on the other side. And I want to be close enough to just touch the wall, but not push into it. Just like the fingers stretch out like spider, the fingers out. So I'm going to position my bolster so I'm close enough to the wall, bolsters across the mat. And then you're going to put a block in front, center on your mat. The block is at the lowest setting. And then the right foot goes on it with the leg turned out, okay? Now this left leg, you might think, well, you gotta push it to the floor. You gotta slam it down. Well, maybe what you might try is to just feel where your sitting bones are pressing down so the flesh of the rear stretches out. And then you can put a ball. My ball's it's not big enough right now for my knee right there. It's kind of leaning my hips. So I'm just gonna put the block under my knee. But if I have a sandbag, I'm sure it was gonna push my leg further down. So you gotta make a choice. What's wise for me, right? Maybe a sand on the left thigh is wise for some of us. But I'm gonna work on just keeping my back of my pelvis kind of in neutral, not tilting. Okay, so you choose. Ball under knee, block under left knee, sand on thigh, and no sand. But as I turn to the right, we're gonna reach for the right knee with the left hand and then reach back to the wall. Now this is where it starts. So the shoulder, I'm going into shoulder clock here. So my fingers stretch out, centerpiece, reach, but you might turn the hand around, turning it so the fingers turn towards 3 o'clock. But you might decide, nope, I'm good. I'm just gonna try to put my fingers on the wall and use that left hand to support my rotation. But usually our feet they're kind of dragged below us, right? That's just living. So our spine doesn't get this opportunity, our pelvis, to kind of really work on pelvic floor, deep pelvic organs. So we're sitting to create that circulation in the pelvic floor, and then working from pelvis to rib cage to chest. So let's take just a few more breaths. If you're not sure about it, you might close your eyes and just feel how your turn is going. If you need to move your hand even on down to the bolster instead of the wall, if it's too much in the shoulder, that's fine. Okay, now turn back center, and then I want you to lean forward. So you're going to tilt forward at the hinge of the hip. And as you reach forward, the right foot is flexing, right? So you get a feeling of flexing through the right foot. Challenging is the spine situation, right? It might really start to go into flex round. So have the hands on the thighs so that you can work through the pelvis, stretching pelvic floor, and then come back to center. Because you were centered the whole time. You never were off center, I guess. Okay, switch the leg that's reaching on the block. So all you need to do is switch it. Don't think too much about it. So sand on over. See how if I have sand, that knee goes down just so much more. So I don't know. I'm going to use the block because it seemed like my pelvis was tilting. So I don't think that the sand, that's kind of an illusion maybe. So I like the sand for grounding, especially for these inner leg pit tissues. Doesn't maybe make it look more flexible, but it's circulation. That's all I care about, is helping my circulation. Don't care about anything else. Okay, so find your line. behind the heart forward. And feel how you twist. You turn from your ribs. Maybe you breath in. And then as you exhale, turn to the left. Right hand to left knee. Yeah, be sure you're not doing like the typewriter moves here. So typewriter would be I'm shifting, right? Ribs. So I'm turning through the axis of the spine. And then as I reach back to the wall, right? It's like if you recorded your sequence, you could see little differences from side to side. So noticing from the inside, right, how your sensation is. Yeah, I feel this side a little more rib sensation. Last side it was a little more pelvis, hip. And oh, it's interesting. You might have to move the block or the ball under the knee. It's like you're wanting to set yourself up to simply sit and be aware. And that's kind of the goal of all of it, huh? You do all the movements, get the energy in the body, flush it out, and then still focus, breath. And now if the movement of the heart is lost, try to keep a little lift at the heart. And release from that twist. You can tell you can do any of those with or without a wall, but the wall is pretty nice. And lean forward to that left leg, kind of bow into that thigh. If that feels too much anyway, it goes. You might be a little higher up. You might hold the back of the bolster. You might just work on the coaching the shoulders to go back. Now, what happens if they go back and you're tilting at the hips, but you have stable pelvis? Now, how far you go, right? Stabilize. Okay, come back on up. All right, so let's take off the sand. Take off the Sand-Aid. And let's come around to our backs again. So we're going to, and remember, if you need to go a little early, be sure to do a little legs up something. Legs up wall, legs up bolster, legs up chair, just a legs up. So let's push our bolster right next to the wall. Okay, so you're gonna take the blankie in. I would say go really low with the blanket. If any blanket, I like some padding under my, like right at the center of the back of my head and up, right, to help this curve. So I don't, overly, flex like this, drop down. I like something here to help me push back into. So you might find more padding than me. You prefer, maybe not. Try to get yourself to go a little lower with time. And it gets to be, it's good, right, for the neck to have that just little arch here. Like a tiny creature could crawl right through, right? You don't want to push it down and create more of that rounding back, right? So little arch. All right, let's take a ball. All right, ball center of the knees. No, wait, let's put the ball at the sacrum. This group has the ball, I think. So place the ball at the base of the spine, maybe a little lower. It's really up to you for comfort. So when you relax down onto the ball, you're going to just let the hips move side to side. You can let your hands rest on the ribs, the hands on the floor. You decide, but just little movements, kind of scrubbing, little sacrum scrubber. This is about the only sacrum scrubber I know, right? Okay. So when you center back in, just relax the weight on the ball. Okay, it's a little bit of that lower belly tightener, right? You can kind of feel it grip up there. So if your spine is kind of scrunching up, you'll purposely let the arms be down by the sides. This is like a bridge pose, right? It's definitely bridgy. It's bridgy. All right. So I'm going to move the ball. Let's see. I'm going to try to find where I'm not going to lose my balance here. Okay. So left foot stays on the bolster and right knee moves towards the right rib cage. Okay, now you gotta play with where the ball is gonna be here. When you scoop the knee in, the lower back kind of lengthens. You feel that? So if the ball's too high, it's gonna feel achy. If the ball's too low, it's gonna actually just roll away. So when you come down with that right foot down to the bolster, kind of feel as you go right into that left side, balancing left knee. We already did knee to chest earlier. We did something with knee to chest, but it wasn't a ball, it was the bolster. It didn't roll away. And then come back down. So continue to work on stabilization. Stabilization center here. Let's just do a couple more. Okay, so we're feeling that movement of the knee in. You might find the knee drops back a lot more than the last time we did this because there wasn't some big bolster under our hips. So feeling as you go slower than you want to go, that you rock out of balance a little bit back and forth. Yeah, we're doing this now, but this is an excellent one. I should put together like a 10-minute homework thing. Maybe I should do that. This is a really good one, right? So now I want you just to lift up the hips and take the ball over to the right buttock. Over it goes. And then lower down and roll the glute. Make it meaningful for your glute, right? Don't go too fast nor too slow. It's like you're learning self-massage, right? So if you're learning massage, right, you definitely want to find the right amount of pressure and movement. And it's definitely an art. And it's a science too. So probably more science than art, huh? But as you glide across, you're going to find where the tissues need to get kind of teased apart because they get, stuck on top into the glutes. And then it goes out to the areas into the rotator that can get snug, sciatic nerve area. Youch, right? So if you get a little clicky in the hip, that's okay. But do find that if you're rolling too high up on the glute, so what I find sometimes is I get into this pattern of I roll kind of onto the glute medius and the side, and then I just keep working on where it's kind of, it feels good, I guess. So don't forget the parts that are maybe just above that. You might move the ball a little bit uptown and go, oh, yeah, that's a little bit more concrete area. Well, that's a plus, right? You go, that's more concrete. It's closer to a bone area. So we try to roll in the soft tissue, but these balls are soft, so they're not going to harm you. Like a tennis ball might not be a great thing to roll in your bone, but good on soft tissue. So these softer ones, you can roll a little bit higher, right, to the pelvis. Now come back center and move the ball to the left side. And if you were just to sit and lay in center for a moment and just close your eyes, likely your right buttock feels a little bit more, a little more spacious. You can feel more circulation. And the other side's a little bit more stuck. Okay. Just takes a little bit of rolling to help it out. Doesn't take much. Before a walk, after a walk. So feel the roll, noticing that the second side is that, it's another side. It's not the same side. There's going to be differences. There's one side of the town, the other side of town. There's differences left to right, likely. And some areas more significant than others. So see what you can do to help deliver an even amount of support on the second side. Maybe the fibers next to the glute medius, which is on the border, right from the buttock over to the hip. Maybe as you scrub that area, it just feels just kind of sticky. So you might just lean into the ball and just kind of do small movements. You might just stay on the ball. Put your left foot maybe up to the right knee. I just like to have my feet on the bolster because that gives me some leverage into the ball. So side to side. Okay, make it meaningful. And then we'll lean into our right buttock unless you want to keep rolling. It's up to you. If your blanket's too low, you can always fold it a little higher for this next one. I like to have the traditional quarter folds. And then we'll take our bolster and we're going to kick it over to the right side of our mat. Yeah, and you might put your blanket on top. If you never do that, you might just try it just to change things up sometimes. And left leg crosses over to the bolster. And you might think, oh, that blanket just makes it too easy. Maybe it stretches your hip more and it's easier on your knee. Maybe you don't like a blanket. But feel this cross balance from the hip, add sand to the outer left thigh, maybe. If you're a little worried about the pressure around the knee, you don't go far down to the knee that way, you just stay higher. Might actually alleviate a little bit of the knee if you have the sand pretty high up to pull away from it. And you don't have to use it, okay? So be in the moment, right? If you always have the sand a specific spot every time, like you always have the bolster, the same spot, change it up. Maybe you move your bolster higher, maybe you move it lower. The ball might be a nice stabilizer, left arm open. All right, we're in the final spinal here. Good stuff. And if the left arm is opening, the arm is generally straight. It's not super bendy. It's not like a cactus pose or goal pose. Straight. And let the spine feel that circulation with this, with a bit of movement, the curve. Maybe we shouldn't call it a twist, maybe we should call it a curve. Feel the breath, whether by touching where it's moving or just noticing. And signaling the breath on the inhalation to fill the body. And let go. Now move the ball, then the sand, and the bolster. Okay, so take it so that you're exploring, moving to that second side, safe as could be. Left foot lowers down. You know, feel kind of the slow-mo of it all, but as you transition the pelvis back to anchor, the center of the back of the pelvis, then the bolster over to the left. Taking the time, just 2 more poses total. So give yourself that opportunity to swing the right leg over to the bolster. And maybe you got a blanket, maybe the side you've chosen on either side. Probably keep it the same on each side. Even if one side likes the blanket more than the other. Try to find how you can work on that balance into the pelvis. And if you had sand on one side, add it to the second side. And support the spine via the openness of the chest to the right. Left hand rests on the ribs or on the floor to the side, and your head rolls gently. It's nice to feel movement of the head, the neck when you're on your back. So just easing the neck to stretch. And with the shoulder trying to center down, it might still be a little lifted. It would likely take just time and reassuring, right, that the armpit chest doesn't have to stay tight, right? It usually hangs down by the side, so this is certainly a change in how you're organizing the spaces of the upper body. Now just roll the ball away. And then the sand. Push it to the wall. And as you turn to that left side, take care. So if it's like your back needs that squeeze, maybe come back to the wall space now. See if you can work your way towards legs up so that we just don't compress our back, squeeze the knees in. At the end, that's fine. And some people still like to do that before they come up to the wall, which is okay. But I try to recognize that I'm working on creating spaciousness in my back. So I'm going to lean it to one side of the bolster, swing my legs up, and then I have this pressure into my, which isn't, it's not bad, but pressure into my low back for creating that arch, right? So that's clearly a stretch into that area. The idea of squeezing the knees in is not creating like space in the spine, but I think we all think that. So when we arch, we're creating the space. This is elongation. So you decide the blanket height under your head, if any. Maybe you don't want any. Maybe you're comfy without. So comfort is the key, right? I want to find that my waist is releasing back, my head is below, right? It is actually a little below my heart. I mean, it's slight, so it's an inversion. And then if you want sand on the feet, place it on. If you decide, nah, I'm good. You see more of legs up without sand than you see sand. Maybe older textbooks are going to have the sand, but it's definitely a little bit more traditional. But it's also good for that weight bearing. So don't forget, and even if it's a bit of a challenge to get there, don't do it. But you can find the reality of the sand is interesting for, and 10 pounds might feel just easy. Okay. Someone else was around to put more on your feet, you might take it. There's some space between your seat and the wall, perhaps, maybe not. I like the space nowadays, a little bit of that. Sometimes I'll move my bolster a little bit higher. Okay, sometimes. They're all taught these different ways. And then let the spine settle. And receiving just a certain blend of movement right now through the legs back towards the heart. It's an unusual blend that you don't have all day long with your feet below you. So receiving that support for the heart, for the brain, for the lower belly lift, and relax. Eyes relaxed, mind settling. Let's just feel a few more cycles of breath kind of combing through the nostrils, the lungs. Just feeling that movement of the ribs and the diaphragm. Now, as the knees take a slight bend, you can toss the sand overhead. Just be aware what's behind you, not your hands. Or the sand can be cleared another way, right? You can bend the knees a bit. Do a little leg press energy through the back and the back of the legs, and then move the sand to your side. And then let the knees go side to side. Feel that kind of floppiness of the leg bones. You can kick the feet up. Yeah, just sort out how the circulation shifts down to the vital organs. So if the feet are a little tingly or sort of slightly cool, it's because of that, right? The blood moves from the extremities and returns back to the vital organs in this pose. So you can kick the legs back up, do a little shake out with the feet. Just be careful not to kick the wall. And then as your legs draw from one side to the next, take your time as you move in towards that cannonball-like shape to the side. Feel that the spine is independent, right, of your chest sometimes, right? You can just let the arms stay, and then they tend to roll with you, and then come around, and come on up, take a seat, and feel your back maybe close to the wall, maybe not completely sealed to the wall so you can roll your shoulders. And feel a solid body. Feel that lift out of the spine, lift out of the heart, and the hands to your heart center, bowing in to your own sweetheart. And then as we center our breath together, feeling the support of this community, breathing in wellness to yourself and to others. And exhale, bowing into that space behind you.